If you've stumbled across this video, you might be one of the many people who have a resolution to read through the entire Bible in a year. And that is a great thing to do. And I'm so happy you were here. My name is Tracy. I am a Christian, but I am not like a scholar or a person who knows everything about the Bible. I'm just reading through the Bible chronologically. And I invite you to join me. I'll be reading it out loud and something that you can listen along to. Sometimes it's just easier to have like somebody doing something with you. And I know that there's many Bible studies and apps and whatnot, but I was looking for a YouTube channel that I could follow along with. And this is what I wanted. So I was like, you know what, let me just start it up. And if someone wants to join me, that is awesome. And if nothing else, I'll have this whole series that I can come back and listen to and think on and just study as I go. I'd done this before once about 2 years ago. And it was really revealing, but honestly, it was during 2020 and there was just so much going on that I kind of skimmed through some of it, like just to like check off the list. And I want to go through it in more detail this time. A little about me. I am an engineer in my real life and I already had all this stuff set up already because I do educational videos for my engineering stuff. So that's why I have all this tech stuff. As a tech person, I have all this software. Also, I have like Logos, which is a Bible study software. One of the reasons I want to read through the Bible chronologically is because it really helps get it in my head what has happened already and what has not. There's so many storylines and plot lines and people to remember that sometimes just reading it in the order it happened is helpful for me to understand what's going on. If you didn't know that already, the Bible is not chronological. It's an order of what they compiled the Bible at, but not necessarily the order that things happened. So for example, it starts with Genesis. That is the first page of the Bible is Genesis. But then Job is much later in the actual Bible itself. But it's what scholars think is one of the first couple books of the Bible. Another example of why it's useful to go chronologically through the Bible is, for me anyway, when you're in the Gospels of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, it's recounting a lot of the similar story of Jesus, but each author puts things in their own order of importance, the story that author is trying to emphasize. And so some of the stories are aligned, but they're just in different orders. A couple stories where all four authors recount what happened. And so putting those all together is useful to compare and contrast and just get a full picture of what's happening. I am a Christian. I do believe the Bible is the truth. I'm going to lay that down as the foundation. I am Protestant Christian. I'm only going to be reading through the Old Testament and New Testament and not any of the other books of the Bible that Catholics have. For translation, I will be using the NET Bible. The NET is a New English translation, and it's supposed to be relatively in the middle between word for word and thought for thought. I'll go into that in a second, but primarily, honestly, it's not my first choice for readability. And if I'm going for a very word for word, I'd probably go towards ESV. And if I was going for a thought for thought, I'd probably go towards New Living Translation or NIV. I just have those two Bibles and they're very easy to read. But the thing about those is that they are published by companies that have pretty decent copyright rules where you can only do certain little amounts at a time. And I really wanted to read aloud along as I went. I'm not the best orator, but I'm doing my best for this because I think it's important to have the text along with the study in order to just be able to like pop it in as you're going on a walk or to relive a certain passage if you maybe had a harder time understanding it. I know a lot of times I just have some time at night with my podcast and I don't necessarily have the full capacity to pull out all the Bible study stuff, all the books and all the everything to have in front of me. So maybe it'd be nice to have it all in one package for a video. If I'm like that, maybe somebody else is like that. So this seemed like the best chance of me reading out loud to be okay. I know that some other people have had difficulty in basically creating an audio Bible. So that's not what I'm doing, but I don't want to have any chance of getting in any trouble with this. I'm not trying to monetize this. I'm just trying to get it out there, just getting ahead of it. It's a relatively recent translation. It looks like it was started in the mid-1990s. 25 of the world's foremost biblical scholars. There's specifically a lot of notes that are in it. For example, if we just pull up a passage of almost like every 5 or 6 words, there is a translator note, which is these blue numbers here is another translator note. And it's just nice to have that context as you're reading along. So we have translator notes, we have study notes, and we have text critical notes, which is alternative readings found in various Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek manuscripts. I find that very interesting. Like I said, I'm an engineer, so maybe that's the scientific part of me really appreciating that. And then also there's a couple YouTubers that I do follow, and this has been some of their recommendations. So I'm not the expert in this, but I go to them because they seem more like an expert. Here's like a top 10 English translations for in-depth study by a YouTuber, R. Grant Jones. Very technical YouTuber in terms of his knowledge of Bible translations. And this is in line with what I've heard from other people and other scholars. This was based on a poll that he did on what people tend to use for in-depth study. And so it's a little bit circular where, maybe people don't always have it right. But, the ESV is commonly used for in-depth study, but that does have a relatively tight usage claims. There are a lot of camps that are very King James only, where King James is considered like that or nothing type of translations. And then New King James is kind of the next step away from that, where some of the major issues have been modified, we'll just say, from the King James version, but they're still the same type of translation. NASB is another one that a lot of people go towards for a very word for word translation if you're trying to hear what the original text actually said. And then I think NLT is just a one that's very easy readable for modern day. When I'm talking about literal versus less literal, word for word versus thought for thought, this is another YouTuber that I'm following, a Frisch perspective, and he has a very, again, scientific, clear way of explaining things, and he is reviewing R. Grant Jones, who's the person we just looked at. He's looking at his translation method, commenting on it, and seems to be in line with what R. Grant Jones is saying, kind of supporting it. Again, I went down the rabbit hole several different times trying to figure out what translations to go off of, and if I'm going to study it, what should I study? And so this is updated enough to where it has the net version in here. If you see, it's kind of right here in the middle between something that's more thought for thought, less literal, and something that's very word for word, more literal. You would think that more literal is better because you want word for word. That was what was originally written. But the problem is those original words might not mean the same thing put together in that same way that they do now. And that's just how language changes over time. And so if the Hebrew was written a certain way, or if the Greek was written a certain way, that would directly word for word translate into a certain words, that meaning might be different. And so you don't want to take that meaning out of context. The more important thing should be the meaning behind it, but then you also don't want somebody else interpreting it for you. So it's that managing that balance between what the words are saying versus what the meaning was behind it, versus coming up with that meaning yourself, versus most of us are not Greek and Hebrew experts. So that's where I'm trying to find that balance, and that's where I settled on net. Probably if I could use anything, I'd use ESV or NASB, but we're going to be referencing other translations as I go, because referencing is fine. It's just the reading out loud in big chunks was the only one I was worried about. This is the software I'm going to be using. So each day that we're going to open with a prayer, read through each chapter at a time, and then pause, study, see if there's anything that didn't make sense, make sure we're all on the same page of what's going on. There's a lot of notes. If something doesn't make sense as I'm reading through it, I can look it up or highlight things, or, oh, hey, we noticed that earlier. In Logos, there's a lot of dictionaries and concordances. Is that what the word is? Like I said, I'm not an expert on this. So here's the Lexham Bible Dictionary is one that pops up quite a bit. We have the Faith Life Study Bible, and we have commentaries that are useful. So I'm trying not to use commentaries too much because I do want to get the meaning out of it myself. Also, honestly, some of these end up being kind of long if we dig too much into all the verses. A lot of these chapters we could just read the entire year and be spending the entire year on each chapter, and that's not the goal. The goal is to get through the entire book in a year, but also understand more of it than just skimming through it. We can always dig more into that later. As we're reading, I will be highlighting things as I go, making notes. Like I said, we'll do one chapter at a time, study, read, and I will try to make the chapters below. So if you don't want to hear me reading, I totally understand. I won't have any offense to that. If you want to skip over me reading it, I understand completely. I just want that as an option for me and for you if you want to hear it and need to hear it. Maybe you don't have a Bible. I'm also going to make it to where you can see the words that I'm reading, because every now and then I do skip some words. So it's not intentional. It's just me, my brain, like looking at the word and missing it. That is not intentional. I'm not trying to like change it. That's just, I have a little bit of ADHD and that just happens. With that, I hope you join along. I hope you enjoy this series as we go. This will get us through the Bible in a whole year. And I'm trying to get ahead of it a little bit because I'm sure there'll be days that I'm not able to film. But for the most part, I'm going to try to get a video out almost every day, if not every day, to where you can do your own pace. Would love to hear your comments on it, your feedback, any resources that you have, any other things that you would love to see incorporated. The other series that I've worked through was the Bible Recap project, where they go through it in a year. That was an excellent series also. Tara Lee Cobble is has a podcast that goes along with that, and she does excellent summaries that really helped me get through the Bible. So if you just have 10 minutes, that would be a good place to start also. And then also YouVersion has their Bible app that has an easy read it at bed at night or in the morning. That was how I got through it the last time. So again, that is another way. I love all those versions. Oh, a little bit about me. I am a mom of one. I have a daughter. She's 6. I am married, been married a long time at this point. I live in Texas, so you might hear an accent come out every now and then, although I've heard that I have a weird accent for a Texan, so who knows. I have a dog, and she likes to click-clack on the floors at the worst times, so you are also sitting right there at the camera right behind the dog door, so she also likes to go out the dog door, like right in the middle of like a very serene, intense portion of the Bible reading, so that might happen. I do apologize. I try to keep her quiet during recordings, but there's only so much I can do. All right, I will see you, and let me know if you're following along. Bye.